Hello, and welcome to the Going Alcohol Free podcast. Hi, I'm Lise. I'm your host, and I'm really glad that you're here today. Today, I am going to be sharing about my drinking story and how I quit drinking alcohol. And I think it's going to be kind of long because it's important for me to share some of the details about my story because if you can relate in any way to my story, to some parts, maybe to some you don't, but maybe to others you do. And if my story helps you, then that's my goal for this podcast is to help people know that they're not alone on this journey, or if they're experiencing, hardship or anything from drinking, that it's okay and you're going to be fine if you make the changes that you need to make. So I want to just go back and share some details, intimate details about my life, because I think that it might be helpful for you or somebody out there listening or watching on YouTube. So as you guys know, I am 51 right now, and I stopped drinking when I was 47 years old. And I never thought that I had a drinking problem until the very end, when I really was making some conscious decisions to cut back, because I wasn't an alcoholic, which I didn't need to wake up in the morning and drink alcohol right away. So my body was not addicted to the alcohol. However, I did drink a lot. And as I was going back and making my notes, I drank almost every single day. As a matter of fact, you know those questionnaires when you go to a doctor and you have to fill it out and it says, how many drinks a day or a week do you have or whatever? Well, I would lie on those forms because I drank every single day. And not just like one drink, but like sometimes 2 to 3. And yeah, there were a few days, of the week that maybe I didn't drink. But for the most part, since I was 21 years old, I have drank or had drank almost every single day. And I try to think of a time when I really didn't drink. I've never had kids, so there wasn't a time, where I couldn't drink. So anyway, I just wanted to say that we all have different stories and past and history. And some of mine might sound similar to yours, and some of my history might not. But we all have something in common if you're listening or watching this, and that is that we probably, well, I know that I drank too much alcohol, and it really negatively impacted my life. And if you're watching or listening to this, you might be thinking the same thing. And that's probably why you're watching or listening. And I'm really glad that you're here. All right. So let me just dive back into my early life, because this does play a role in my alcohol use. So my parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. I don't really remember too much about my parents being together because, I was only 5 when they got divorced. There were some times that I do remember them being together, us as a family, but I really honestly maybe have 1 or 2 memories of that. And so I went to go live with my mom, who was a nurse, but my mom worked night shift. So all I remember was staying with the babysitter and sleeping at the babysitter's house and just being at the babysitter's house. I mean, that's kind of the extent of me living with my mom, which was for like a year. So maybe when I was like 6 years old, I went to go live back with my dad. And my dad got remarried to my stepmom when I was 5. Now, when I was living with my mom, after my parents got divorced, I was living with my mom. My dad got remarried to my stepmom, and I was not invited to the wedding. You know how, like, most parents, I say most, not all, most parents want to have their child as their flower, flower girl or ring bearer or something. Well, I was not even told about this wedding. I was not invited. I was not told about it, nor was my mom. And as a 5-year-old child, or I guess 6 years old when I found out, I was really hurt by this. I felt very hurt by not being invited to be in this wedding, even as a 6-year-old child. So again, I'm telling you these things because there's reasons behind this. Now, I grew up with my dad and my stepmom and did not have much relationship with my mom after I stopped living with her. Okay. And my stepmom and my dad actually ended up having a child and also adopting 4 other children. So now I'm one of 6 children living with my stepmom and my dad. And the reason I tell you this is because I felt like I never really belonged somewhere. And again, this comes into my drinking as we get into further into the story. Now, did I know all of this? I didn't know all of this was going to impact my life the way that it did until I actually started to do a little bit of work on myself, a little bit of self-development. And so that's why I'm telling you some of these intimate details of my life. Now, as a child, I did get straight A's in high school, and I was a straight A student. I did very, very well, but things were always not necessarily good enough for my dad, and that also impacted me, and also impacted older Lise. So I'll get to all of that, but I have to tell you this stuff because it's important. And it's this next statistic might make some of you very upset, but I I never got a DUI. But boy, should I have gotten one? Absolutely. And I tried to write down how many times I thought that I drank alcohol and then drove and could have gotten a DUI. So in other words, blew over the legal limit in the United States, which is where I live. And I guessed at, I probably drove over the limit probably 700 times. I mean, and it might even be more than that. I definitely don't think it's under that. I never got a DUI. Did I get close? Yeah, I did. One time I saw this like stop, and I turned, and they were catching people that were turning away. And luckily they already had caught a couple people that had turned away, and I turned away and I was not pulled over because I probably could have gotten a DUI at that time. Now, I know that might upset some of you. And, as I got older, I stopped doing that. But in my younger days, I was not very smart in that aspect. So then another time when I was in my 20s, I definitely know that I have guardian angels because when I was in my 20s, I had a Harley. It's a motorcycle, and I was driving at 90 miles an hour drunk. And I remember looking down at it and saying 90. And I was definitely intoxicated. And I should have, anyway, you get what I'm saying. I did not make a lot of smart decisions when I was drinking. And, that's just life. I don't spend a lot of time now in regrets. And if you have a lot of regrets, we're going to talk about regrets in a future episode. But living in the past is not serving us in any way. So, my first drink, and I think I mentioned this before, was around age 15 or so. I think it was around 15. And I was at a party, which I wasn't really allowed to go to parties, but for some reason, this one party was right down the street, like a block away. And I drank alcohol at that party and I got super sick. And I remember laying in the closet throwing up. And that was my very first experience with alcohol. Now, let me go back just 1 second, real quick. When I was about 8 years old, this is really important. I have to tell you this. When I was about 8 years old, my dad and my stepmom had a friend over who brought a bottle of wine over to share with them. And I remember my dad saying he didn't want to drink the bottle of wine. And I remember as an 8-year-old child telling my dad, "Oh, good. I'm so glad. It's really bad for you." Now, I don't know where that came from or how I knew that, but I think that as I talk about in the next episode, why I knew that as an 8-year-old child. So again, I'm just telling you things that I think are really important for you to understand and know why to understand and know that some of these things, maybe you've experienced some of these things too. And that's just, I know I keep saying that, but it's really important. Okay. So I don't ever really remember seeing my parents drink alcohol ever, my stepmom and my dad, nor my mom. So it wasn't really a thing in my immediate family. There wasn't alcohol I don't remember alcohol being served at parties or get togethers or holidays or anything like that. Now, going back to when I was 15 and I was at that party. So, yeah, not a good first experience. However, I started sneaking out of my house when I was like in 10th grade and going and just having alcohol with the seniors. And I was a sophomore, and you know, so I wasn't allowed to go to parties. So I was like, well, I'll show you. I'll go to parties. And I would drink at these parties. And I remember having fun. I remember getting away with it. It was kind of sneaky and I enjoyed that. But I got caught. I got caught. I got in trouble. And so that was the end of my drinking in high school until college. So I went away to a university, and my very first experience drinking alcohol was when I was a freshman. And we went out and we were underage and we got served beer or something. And I just remember having so much fun drinking this alcohol and being out. And that was when it clicked. Like, this is so much fun going out and drinking. And so the first belief that came across me was, alcohol and fun. I started creating these neural pathways in my brain, like alcohol and fun together. Yes, like alcohol means fun. And so I spent my college years basically drinking a lot of alcohol. And that is when I started drinking when I was a junior in college. I started drinking every single day. Tanqueray and tonic was my favorite. And the reason why I started drinking Tanqueray and tonic was because I didn't like the calories of the beer. So I was thinking, oh, okay, well, Tanqueray is clear. Anyway, somebody told me that, like, well, you want to drink Tanqueray or vodka? And Tanqueray and tonic with a lime was so much more tastier than vodka and soda or something. So anyway, that's why I chose Tanqueray and tonic. And that was when I started drinking every single day, all the way until I got my corporate job, which my corporate job was right out of college, I worked at a big six CPA firm, which I think there's only four. It's now, I think it's called the Big Four. But at the time I worked for a big six CPA firm and I hated every single minute of it. And I would come home and I would be miserable, but I was in my 20s, right? Early 20s. So I had some friends and we would do the, like, back in the day, Zima. I don't know if you guys remember Zima, the malt liquor drink. And we would go out for 10-cent beer night. And so that was like Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Friday, Saturdays, and Sunday fun days, going to the beach. So this cycle of drinking started happening. And it was a way to kind of escape from real life, Monday through Friday, going to work. And that's when it all kind of just started. And I continued to drink, you know, throughout my 20s. Now, I did get married when I was 29. That was my first marriage, which only lasted a few years. So when I got married and I was 29, just drinking wine with dinner. We would go out to eat a lot. So wine and dinner. And then, of course, on the weekends, we were young, no kids, having fun. So once my divorce happened, so I was in my 30s now, still in the corporate world. Now, what I thought was that once I hit six figures, meaning making over $100,000 a year, then my life would be perfect. My life would be so much better and just everything would fall into place. Well, I got divorced. I hadn't yet started making really great money yet, but I got a divorce. And then I started, remember, I could handle my alcohol and handle my life. Although it was starting to, you know, I wasn't making the best decisions for sure. I wasn't making very good decisions. And then in my 30s, I started making over six figures. And that is when I kind of hit this goal that I had set for myself. And I hit that goal and I thought everything was going to be rainbows and daisies once I hit that goal. But what happened was I started to self-sabotage myself. I started to drink even more. And like I said, I would call all of this binge drinking, like especially on the weekends, binge drinking galore. Now, I lived alone after I got divorced, so I didn't have to hide my alcohol, but I definitely, at some point, which I'll get to, I was hiding drinking. And this was even after I quit my job, my corporate world job, but all the way in my 30s. So I made six figures, but I started to self-sabotage myself, drinking more alcohol. I believed, now I didn't know this at the time, but I thought I was unworthy. I thought I didn't deserve this. How could I deserve this? Who am I to make this kind of money? I'm unworthy. I'm not enough. All of these things that I didn't know that I believed at the time, but that was part of my problem. And I was coping with emotions, not only from my childhood, that of these beliefs that I came up, that bubbled to the top from when I was a child. And like I said, this whole time, even though I thought alcohol meant fun, what alcohol was doing for me was helping me cope with emotions that didn't feel good. When I would feel sad or, you know, whatever was happening at the time, if I was going through a divorce or going through a breakup or going through dating and somebody wouldn't call back or it would end right away or something, using alcohol to cope with all of these things that I was going through. And so that was in my 30s. And in my 40s, it just continued to get a little bit worse, where I was drinking now a bottle of wine almost every single day. And yeah, I'm just thinking back as I'm speaking to you about this, but I was drinking a bottle of wine almost every day and binge drinking every single weekend. And I know I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but I thought of this as a way that I could escape from my life. I didn't like the life that I had built for myself. My whole life, I knew that I wanted to go into the corporate world and have a corporate job. Yet I didn't enjoy it at all. And my soul was kind of starting to knock on the inside and starting to let me know that something isn't right here. Like maybe this corporate job isn't the right fit for you. And maybe you've got some work to do on yourself. Maybe you should do something different. But no, I couldn't see any of that at the time. And I think that, I need to tell you this really quick. But when I was 19 years old, and I forgot, this is really big though. When I was 19 years old, I was in college and I was having my very first keg party. In other words, it was my money from my job that I worked at a restaurant. And I actually had my neighbor buy the kegs and I was having a keg party. And I was doing cheerleading stunts because I was a cheerleader in high school. I was doing cheerleading stunts at this keg party when I was 19 in college. I was a sophomore and the guy dropped me and I shattered my elbow. I mean, literally shattered it into two pieces. The only thing that was holding it together was the skin. And I had to withdraw from college, go back home, live at home for a little while I was rehabbing this elbow because I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. And again, I should have taking warning that drinking brings bad things to me, but I didn't. So it was really important that I just mention that as well. So back in now taking you back into my 40s, and I quit my job when I was 41 and I am 51 now. I can't believe it's been 10 years. Yeah. So I quit in 2014. That's crazy to think that. But I didn't know what I was going to do. I I quit my job and I had a really bad boss. I mean, a really bad boss. He was not a good person. So I was like, you know what? This is the this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I quit. Literally, I went to the doctor. Somebody had mentioned maybe I was having a panic attack, but when I was telling the story before to somebody, but I went straight to the doctor, like left my office in the middle of the day and went to my doctor. And she wrote me a week off of work right then and there. My blood pressure was through the roof. And I took a week off and I took another week off. I had her write another note. She wrote another note. So I took 2 weeks off. I might have even taken more than that. And during that time, I said, you know what? This isn't worth it. This is not the life that I imagined for myself. It is, I thought, until at that point in time, looking back, going, I'm miserable. I might be making good money, but nothing in my life is going right except for that. And I quit. And I said I would never go back to a corporate job. And I have never gone back to a corporate job. And it's been 10 years. And that was a really great decision. But my very best decision I ever made was not drinking alcohol anymore. We're getting to that. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I kept drinking. And because I didn't have a job to go to, I was still drinking like during the day. Now I could drink during the day. I could drink whenever I wanted to. And after I left my corporate job, I ended up finding a partner. And as of right now, we've been together for 9 years. So we met after I left my corporate job. And I was even hiding alcohol from him. It was like drinking wine in a coffee cup, putting it in, you know, thermoses, mugs, and hiding it. And sometimes I would even have a glass of wine in the morning. Again, I didn't have a job that I was going to, but I was doing other work. And I'm going to get into that part here in a second too. But it just because I quit my corporate job does not mean that my life just poof was amazing. It wasn't, because I still was dealing with, well, now I was even dealing with my identity crisis, because now I didn't have a job to go to. And who was I? Who am I? Like, I've always been in corporate finance and been that, that person. I don't even want to say titles, because titles don't even matter anymore, but I had a really good job. And now I had no job. And my identity, I felt like my boss had taken my identity away from me. And with no identity, who was I? So I was drinking even more alcohol. And I was drinking, during this time, I was drinking wine. So Chardonnay was my favorite, Prosecco, and also tequila. A little, like, shot of tequila just to get the buzz going, right? That's the first thing. I would just do one, buy one of those little bottles like this, those little tiny bottles that have an ounce or two in it. And I would buy one of those, drink that, and then drink the wine. And then once the wine was gone, I would drink the Prosecco. So that was kind of my routine. And that was definitely on the weekends, like I said, for football, anytime there was a reason, Friday nights, Saturdays, and no job to go to. So I could drink late into the night. And this gets to the point right now, right here, where I could not look at myself in the mirror at this point. This is how ugly I felt on the inside, that when I would walk by the mirror, I couldn't look at myself. I felt like I had no identity. I didn't know who I was. And alcohol was helping me feel better and cope with the situation that I was now in, which was no job. And what was I going to do? So what I'm going to do is end this session here right now and continue it with the next episode, picking up exactly how I ended up quitting drinking alcohol, because it's a good story how I did it without willpower, without AA, and I literally have no desire whatsoever to drink alcohol ever again. And one thing to be clear, I never tell myself that I cannot drink alcohol. I never say, well, I cannot have alcohol. I just choose not to have it. There's a big distinction there. And we're going to talk about that again. All right. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. Remember, this is always on YouTube as well. If you want to watch, the link is in the description below. I will be back very soon with part 2. Shine bright, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.